28,000 police reservists will be trained and deployed across rural areas. This is part of government's National Rural Safety Plan that's intended to stop farm attacks and address farm worker abuse. The Minister of Police, Fikile Mbalula, together with the leadership of Agri SA, met last week to discuss this plan. Agri SA represents 28,000 farmers in South Africa. To talk to us more about this issue, we joined in our studios in Pretoria by Kobus Visser. He is Director of Corporate Liaison at Agri SA. Kobus, good morning to you and thank you so much for coming through.
Good morning and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much indeed. Now, share with us the state of affairs in terms of farm attacks in South Africa. How rife is this issue?
I think if one looks at the first part of this year, we saw a dramatic increase in the number of farm attacks compared to the previous year. But what is important to note is the brutality that accompanied these farm attacks. We heard of people being burnt with warm irons, plastic being melted on them, even drills used to torture these people. So I think if one look at the broader picture of farm attacks, it's not a very good situation out there. And that's why we decided to have a discussion with the Minister and to see what plans can be made and to introduce a better working relationship and also to combat these farm attacks.
But let's just look at the main reasons behind these attacks. Is it just plain crime because one would think that farmers stay in remote areas and they are vulnerable, or do you think there is a motive behind all of this? Because in many cases you find that the culprits are former farm workers or farm workers.
The main motive in terms of research that has been done in the past is that the motive is robbery, and it's agreed to obtain valuables that they can sell. It's cash that they're after, firearms that they can use in other crimes, jewelry that they can sell, electrical equipment which is easy to sell out there and to gain money. And in a study done in 2002 by the then Minister of Police, Mr. Steve Twitter, in a commission, they also found that there were some incidents where the state prosecutors found that an amount of hate was involved in this type of farm attacks.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the statistics that over the past 15 years, 8,065 farmers were attacked, 924 of them were killed. This is, of course, a call of concern. But we've also had the Minister saying that farm worker abuse also needs to be addressed. Why is it that we still hear stories of farm workers being abused by farmers?
One must be very careful not to generalize. The Minister himself said that there are many good farmers out there making a contribution to this country's economy, making a contribution to food security. And he also emphasized that in any society you will get some rotten apples, but the rule of law have to deal with them. And I would like to take you back to 2015, the investigation that was done by the Human Rights Commission on violence on farms. Two very important findings that they came to conclude was, one, that there are many good working relationships between farm workers and farm owners, and that should be more being emphasized in the media, for example. Secondly, they also found that the negative stereotyping of farms should be eradicated. So what they found is that in the majority of cases, very good working relationships exist on farms between farm workers and the employees. And to further strengthen that view was a study done by the International Labour Organization on conditions on farms, and they've also found that there were in general very good working relationships and conditions on farms.
But the reality of the matter is, Kobus, that we still do hear of stories of farmers that are being abused. But nonetheless, I think the question really to Agri SA is, how do you maintain that good relationship between farmers themselves as well as their farm workers?
if you look at our structure, we have at a national level and at provincial level labour relation committees that deals with labour issues, where we discuss labour policy, legislation, and it's also an educational aspect where we educate our members on how to deal deal with their workers in terms of existing legislation. I think what's also important, what the Minister also said, is that we must look at the employment of undocumented people, and that should be stopped, and because it's very difficult for the police to apprehend undocumented people who are involved in crimes in rural areas.
Yeah, and in 1997 there was a rural protection plan that was put in place, and in July 2011 there was also the National Rural Safety Strategy that was also put in place. Are you hopeful with this current one that is currently in place that it will help or assist in terms of reducing the number of farm attacks or even do away with them?
Yeah, you're talking about the National Rural Safety Strategy. We feel it's the best policy that does exist at present to curb farm attacks and rural crime. And the discussion with the Minister evolved around the implementation of that strategy. We feel that it is not been effectively implemented. And we made a few proposals to the Minister on how to more effectively implement the strategy, and that's why the Minister set up a small task team to look at the implementation of the strategy, to look at components of the strategy such as sector policing, reservists, the effective implementation of reservists, even the inclusion of farm attacks as a strategic focus in the police's safety strategies, to try and combat farm attacks more proactively.
All right, Mr. Visser, we'll leave it at that for now, but thank you so much for talking to us here on Morning Live. All right, well, there you have it. That was Kobus Visser, Director of Corporate Liaison at Agri SA, talking to us about the new strategy that over 1,000 police reservists will be trained and deployed across all rural areas here in South Africa as to fight farm attacks. Let's take a break here on Morning Live, 2 minutes before the news at 7. A Malaysia judge